So I'm Russell Osgood. I'm from the Firefighter Cancer Support Network. I'm the Vice President of Education, and then there's a whole bunch of other stuff after it. I'm also a fire chief in Gunkwit, Maine. Does anyone know where Maine is? Somebody knows where Gunkwit is because they've been there, yeah. So it's a little town on the coast of Maine. It's a great place. So what I want to talk to you today is about our training and resources that we have, and I'm going to show you only a sample of a program we have. So let's talk a little bit about our programs. First, we have two programs that we deliver. We deliver Taking Action Against Cancer in the Fire Service, which is about an hour and a half to 2 hour program that is very comprehensive. You're going to see part of it today, and we deliver that in a whole bunch of ways. And then we have Prevent, Detect, Protect. That's a new program that we've partnered with Sarah Janke's group and NDRI and the Center for Fire Rescue EMS Research and Detect Together. And that program travels the country at major events, and we deliver it. And it's a science-based focus of what's going on. And we talk a lot about both the cancer issue and the cardiac issue because they're very synergistic. They work together, right? So if we're doing things that protect our cardiac health, we're actually doing things that protect and prevent cancer. So really important to work together. The Taking Action Against Cancer in the Fire Service program is available as a train the trainer. We do bring it out to places and do large groups so you can train your own department. We pass it off. That's the whole point of it, is to pass it off so everybody gets the education that they need. And we're available to do that. And then online, there's a bunch of online trainings now that are available, all the way from the National Volunteer Fire Council to the IFF to the FCSN recently just launched one within the last 3 or 4 weeks. And Detect Together, the partner that we have with the Prevent, Detect, Prevent, I can never say that right, program. Their program is all about early cancer detection. It's really important and great. And then there's lots of different video resources out there. The Fire Center for Excellence has some great videos that were done through FDNY that are really good cancer prevention videos that are shareable, and they have wonderful short messages that you can share with your members. Right here, the University of Miami, they've got videos. The FCSN's got videos. Healthy In, Healthy Out, which is out of the northwest corner at the Washington State Fire Council, is a very good program. And out of Boston, we use the Take No Smoke program and some of their Boston videos in our program. So these are the people that we take videos from for our program, and you're going to see a few of them from right here in Miami when we go over that. And then research through the FCSN. Our programs are very science-based, very research-based. We try to take all the data that we get from the different researchers and share that in the field. So you're getting the most recent and most up-to-date information, and these are the people that we work with. And there's a lot more. There's a lot of great research going on in the fire service that is really helping us out understand this issue and make some changes. So we're going to look at a sample of our program. We're going to look at modifiable risk factors, best practices, early cancer detection, and survivorship. This is the tail end of the program. The first part is all about the science, and I figured because we're here in Miami at a conference with a lot of people that know about the science, and a lot of the people that are here understand that we have a problem of cancer in the fire service, I don't have to sell you on it. You get it, right? You understand it. So I'm not going to try to sell you on it. We're going to talk about what we can do about it a little bit, and this is just an example of our program. So if you want it in a different way, or us to come in and give it, or learn to teach it yourself, you can do that. So all of the risk factors and a lot of the prevention things that we have are all things that you can do that work both to reduce your risk for cardiovascular disease and reduce your risk for cancer. So keep that in mind as we go through, because they are very synergistic and they're very important to work to prevent both of these. So one of the big things is no tobacco, right? Don't smoke. Doc Hamrock says it the best of anyone I've ever heard. If you smoke, you buy yourself a trip to the cancer ward. I don't know how much clearer you can get than that. When I started in the fire service, I started in 1985. There was a ashtray or somebody smoking in the station all the time. Does anyone have that experience? Like every firehouse had ashtrays, kitchen tables, smoking while you eat. It was miserable. Today, does anyone smoke in a firehouse? Probably not, right? And over my career, I have seen fewer and fewer people smoking on the job. But recently, I've seen this slide to the other direction of people chewing tobacco. And I'm not sure why, but I see it a lot, and that's just as bad. It's no better than smoking. Maybe it doesn't cause lung disease, but it causes a whole host of other cancers, so it's just as bad. And then when you throw vaping in, look, just stop putting stuff in your system that shouldn't be there. It'd be better off. Alcohol. So alcohol in the fire service, do we like to drink? Maybe a little bit, yeah. So the fire service there's a lot of alcohol in the fire service. We know that because we have research that shows that there's a lot of drinking in the fire service. And this chart comes, Sarah Janke put this together for us, but we see colon cancer and esophageal cancer is higher in firefighters because of occupational exposure, right? We know that through those research. But if you drink 3.5 or more drinks per day, you increase that risk even further, right? So what does 3.5 drinks a day mean? What is that classified as? That's binge drinking, basically. It doesn't seem like that would be binge drinking. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it doesn't have to be a lot. Like that's the point where you increase that risk. And it's a huge increase. So if we can get firefighters to understand that the general rule of thumb is 1 drink a day for the ladies, 2 for the guys. I know it's unfair, sorry, but that's the rule. That's American Cancer Society's rule, not mine, okay? And you can't save them up and just have them all on the weekend. Doesn't work that way. So sorry about that too, but that's the way. So if you had your drink yesterday, or you had 4 yesterday, you can't have another 4 today. It doesn't work that way, okay? The deal is moderation, right? Like don't overdo it all the time. That's the key. The key is to moderate your alcohol intake. And then sunscreen. So I'm from New England. If you're here in Miami, you probably are pretty aware you need to put sunscreen on every day, right? Because you're in it all the time. It's something, or California, right? That's kind of like the thing. You wear a hat or whatever it is. So I'm follically challenged, obviously. I burn really easily, and that's a problem for me. It has been since I was a kid. I get really bad sunburns really quick if I don't pay attention. And it wasn't until recently I realized how important this was, because now I go to my dermatologist, and the first time I went, she's like, oh, look, you got some spots. And then the second time I went, ooh, you got a little garden growing there. And the third time I went, she's like, wow. And every single time I get about 10 spots burnt off my head that are all precancerous. And I'm headed down the road of, I got to go, when we talk about early detection, if I don't go, it could lead to some very serious skin cancer and then have bigger problems. So if I could just start wearing sunscreen, or if I had worn sunscreen earlier, maybe that's a different story. So I wear it pretty religiously now when I'm not wearing a hat and when I'm outside. So we even put it on our fire trucks, because when we're stuck on the highway, we want to make sure guys are able to put sunscreen on if they're stuck out in the sun. So nutrition becomes really important. It's easily modifiable, right? What we eat. Anyone seen In Defense of Foods? It's a documentary by Michael Pollan. It's a pretty good documentary. He kind of wrapped it up for me. This is, I thought, the best way to say it about nutrition is to eat food, not too much, and mostly plants. So 3 simple things, right? Eat food means eat real food. Stay away from processed food. Processed foods have preservatives and things in them that don't need to be in your system. So eat real food, clean food. Not too much, don't overeat. We know that overeating leads to obesity. Obesity leads to cardiovascular disease and cancer. So it's great advice. And then mostly plants. Well, that's the one I back off a little bit on, but I understand that that's a healthy diet. So in the fire service, we know that like a Mediterranean diet is a really good diet for firefighters. But I'm not going to tell you what diet to use. I'm just going to tell you to eat good food, clean, real food, and don't eat too much, and eat more vegetables. The leafy green stuff, all the vegetables that you eat, they help with cardiac disease. They actually, if you are really interested and you want to see a really cool documentary by Dr. Lee in Harvard, is called Eating to Starve Cancer, where he talks about certain food groups and certain foods that have a process that block the blood vessels and the cells from growing in cancer. And it's interesting stuff. So you can actually have a diet that actually combats cancer, and that's important. So just eat right. Sleep was one of those things that we hadn't talked about a lot till recently, and we probably should have. Anyone on the job have a sleep problem at all? Maybe? Like, shift work's a lot of fun, right? You go to 4 or 5 calls one night, you get a lot of sleep. The problem with in the fire service is we do have a sleep problem. We have a lot of folks with sleep apnea. We have a lot of restless leg syndrome. We have a lot of issues around sleep. I know when I was on the floor, now I'm a fire chief, I sleep every night, it's great. When I was on the floor, I didn't get more than 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night, and that's not healthy. As you can see, we need more than 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night. We need a good night's rest every night, because that's the time our bodies are really doing their work and cleaning up and rejuvenating, and these natural killer cells are out there doing their thing. They have to build up. Your immune system needs to work right. You don't get enough sleep, it's not gonna. So that's really important. So as we transition to best practices from modifiable risk factors, these are things that we can do from the fire scene forward, right, to change our outcome. And I wanna show you first this video from right here in Miami, and some of you probably seen this, but it shows the process of from the fire scene basically to the home of how we get stuff contaminated, and then we'll talk about how we avoid that after.
So this is super invisible powder that's used actually for theft detection and cache, but one of the things we're trying to simulate is pretending that this is black soot, just the same type of soot that comes off combustible and burning materials you would encounter in a fire incident response. The initiative actually came to us right, from the Palm Beach County Fire Rescue Department. They were very interested in understanding about how what they did for work was impacting their health, specifically how maybe being a firefighter or an EMS responder may increase their risk for cancer. One of the things we were trying to do today is figure out, is there a way we can demonstrate how maybe cancerous materials are transferred from a fire incident response back to the fire station and personal vehicle. And so today was really a teaching exercise and a scientific exercise of trying to see how we demonstrate where soot, represented by this invisible dye, might be transferring from when they go to respond to a fire and come back to the fire station. So the goal today was trying to be able to identify, can we feasibly show how soot is transferred from a fire incident response back to their truck and back to the fire station. As you start going through the different scenarios of post-decon into the fire engine, back into the bunk, into the restrooms, back here to the coffee table, it starts becoming less visible to the naked eye. But that powder that is invisible over chronic exposure could be potentially causing cellular changes that we just don't know about yet. And hopefully through some of our studies we can start identifying those changes. was really an eye-opening experience for us because I anticipated, some demonstration of how much dye would transfer. I didn't realize the breadth and scope of how much dye would spread within the different scenarios that we were shooting in, as well as continue to transfer on after the first fire engine truck. So for me, it was very impressive to see even some of the invisible dye transfer onto the bunks where they're sleeping at night. Even if it's a smaller quantity, you could imagine that low-dose chronic exposure of this dye might be potentially increasing the risk over time. We filmed today in the EMS's personal vehicle. You could easily see even fainter wisps of plume of dye on the ceiling as well as on the seat that were not direct contacts, but were physically visible on this, suggesting that the particulate moves around. So you might not visibly see soot, and in this case we got to see a dye, but that could potentially be increasing your cancer risk. The firefighter works as a fomite and is transferring, carcinogen from where their place of work back to their personal home. So we had an opportunity to have a child with us today to be able to demonstrate maybe what happens in passing some of that soot using a soccer ball. So we were able to have a child play with one of the EMS firefighters with that soccer ball, and we were able to see second-degree transfer of this invisible dye, i.e. the soot, transfer from the EMS to the soccer ball and to the child. One of the activities that I hope arises from this video that we're producing is that firefighters are a little bit more cognizant about how hygiene is a very important aspect, and decontamination is an important aspect of post-incident fire response, because it makes them a little bit more aware of not only of the soot that they bring back into the fire station, but also what they might be taking to their personal homes and sharing with their families through secondary and tertiary contact of this soot on their own person. And I hope that the firefighters see that as a way of creating an opportunity for awareness and discussion of how we improve hygiene and decontamination within the fire service.
I think the thing that touched me the most in that is the transfer to the child. Like that just, to me, shouldn't happen, and it's scary. There's actually a EFO paper that comes out of the Northwestern U.S. that talks about firefighters' children that have a higher risk, and they're over 200% risk for getting cancer than the general population's children, which it's a small study, but still that just speaks volumes to me that, we need to focus on this stuff, not just for us, but for our families, and particularly for our kids and the young folks that are around. So let's talk about some best practices, starting with station design. So our stations are pretty concrete, right? We have them, they're here, and it's hard and expensive to do a lot of modifications to them, but there are things that we can do. But particularly when we build new stations, we should really focus on reducing our exposures in the station. And that comes with a design, a hot zone, a transition, or a hot, warm, cold zone design, where you have an area where it's okay to have some of that dirty stuff in there, and that's where it's supposed to be, where the fire trucks are, where you bring your dirty gear back and you clean it. And then you have a transition zone where you have your decon process, your clean gear storage, your laundry, showers and stuff, where you're working your way back. So when we saw those guys come back to the station, they went right into the room, and we saw that transfer. If we can break that when we go into our living quarters, where we eat and sleep and hang out, we want that to be clean. We want it to be really clean. So we stop that secondary exposure. So that's the model that we can do that. Is it practical to do this in every firehouse in the U.S.? It's probably possible, but we're talking lots of money and lots of time changes. And there's little things that you can do through policy change and things to make it better in those situations. I came from an old city where, we had a couple stations. One of them was built in 1919, and you could stand where the pole hole was, and you could see a black ring around the door from the soot coming up. And it's just the way it was. That was part of the station. We built a new station, pole hole, everybody concerned about it, but when you hit the floor and you walk down the door onto the apparatus spray, you could feel the air pushing from behind you because they used air handling systems to change the pressure to reduce the exposure on the other side of the door. So there's lots of different things you can do. This one is always interesting for me, and it seems fairly simple to wear your SCBA from the beginning of fire attack to the end of overhaul. And I've been teaching this class, or I've been teaching cancer prevention classes and saying this exact same message since 2011. And after every class, I can go home and watch the news, and I can see it not being done after every single class. There's no doubt in my mind I could turn the news on or search a news story for a fire department and see this being violated in the cities that, from the ones that say they do it all the time to the ones that, I mean, it's across the board. The deal is, I ask in most of my classes, hey, at the last fire you went to, when you came back, you blow your nose, what did you get? And somebody always says, oh yeah, you get those black, you know, you get black out of your nose. Well, if you're getting black out of your nose, something's not right, right? Like if you're in a chemical plant, you wouldn't be saying, oh yeah, I got exposed at work without having a problem. So we need to do better at this. The rule of thumb really is from the beginning of fire attack to the end of overhaul. End of overhaul is really defined as everything's cold, wet, probably the day after. That's really the deal. Good air management plans are important. There's a lot of stuff that plays into this, but you got to get buy-in from the guys. That's where it really starts. You got to get guys to do it. You might have to put more people on the fire ground, rotate people more often. There's ways to do it, but this is one area where we really, really need to do better. Maybe we will. Exhaust, a lot of diesel exhaust and exhaust problems in the fire service. Been decades we've been talking about diesel exhaust in the fire service. From it being in our stations, causing cancer, that was the first thing that they talked about, and then we got grants to put in source capture. And we still say, at the FCSN, we still say source capture is the best. There's nothing like grabbing it at the truck and getting it out of the building. But not every department has the funds or the resources to do that, and there's other models out there. There's other things that work. Use what works, but the deal is reduce your exposure to the diesel exhaust, even on fire scenes. Firefighters, we do a couple med calls a year, right? It's a small part of what we do. Yeah, right? Exactly. Good laugh. What do you do? Like probably 70 to 80% of what we do is medical, right? So one of the things that we learned in where I was is that our med gear, we had all of our med bags were in a compartment, and what was right at the bottom of the compartment? Exactly. So by doing one simple thing of moving that stuff away from the exhaust, we avoided an enormous amount of exposure. And it was a simple process. We just moved the bags. Really easy. Put the stuff that you're not going to use very often, like the hose and the nozzles and things like that, in that compartment. So there you go. So there's solutions. So avoid diesel exhaust. Anyone have a clean cab? Anyone using clean cabs? It's a great tool, right? And there's been a lot of talk about whether you have air packs in them or not. You know, I've heard all the arguments over the years about it. But the deal for me is that a clean cab is a cab that can be cleaned. You don't necessarily I mean, you can take your air packs out if that's what your department wants, or not have your gear in it at all if that's what your department wants. It's what your department needs. But the cab itself, there's tools out there like not having cloth seats. You know, cloth seats are difficult to clean, so having easily clean seats, smooth surfaces that can be wiped down easily. Windows that roll up automatically when you put the truck in pump. That's a huge benefit, right? Like if you're putting the truck in pump, you're expecting some smoke exposure. So if the windows go up, it keeps the stuff out of the cab. It helps. Air filtration systems, all that stuff plays a big role, and there's plenty of it going around. In fact, you can even get trucks now that shut down and don't idle any longer, right? That's an option. You go to a med call, the truck just shuts itself off. It'll start back up when you need to go. Reduces fuel use, reduces your exposures to diesel exhaust, a lot of different things. So clean cabs are a great concept and something that we can do. Our use with our gear, or where we store our gear, or transport our gear, that's one thing that we could do better on as well. We have a lot of small volunteer departments in my area, and I know down here there's probably not a lot of volunteer departments. I asked one class and there's not a ton, but there's a lot of volunteer firefighters. A lot of those guys bring their gear with them everywhere they go. So they should be really paying attention to not putting dirty gear in their cars and putting it in something that will seal it up. When we transfer gear from station to station, the same concept. Get a good gear bag that seals it up. Put it in a plastic bag. There's a whole bunch of things. Don't store it in your car. Storing gear in your car can create a problem. We know when it gets warmed up, like if your windows are shut and the car starts warming up, it gets to a point it starts off-gassing again. And is our gear always clean? Even after it's washed, is it really clean? No, there's some level of contaminant in it a lot of the time. While we're talking about gear, let's just talk about PFAS real quick. It is part of our program, and it's not something that, it's a hot topic in the fire service, right? So does everybody know what PFAS is? Forever chemicals, right? You guys researchers on PFAS? Yeah. So it's a forever chemical. It's out there. I'm from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We had a well on the Air Force Base that I was stationed at that was polluted, and it polluted the water in our fire station for God knows how long until they shut it off. And we had our levels tested, and we had a number of guys that have extremely high levels. So we started talking about it. Well, now we fast forward, and it comes from AFFF foam, something that we use in the fire service. There's a problem. It's in our gear as a water repellent. It's in a lot of things that we use on a daily basis. It's out there. It's everywhere. But as firefighters, if it's in our gear, we still have to wear our gear at a fire, right? You can't not wear your gear. Until we have an alternative, you got to wear your gear at a fire. Don't wear your gear while you're working out. Don't wear it at the road race. Don't wear it to the grocery store. That's not when you need to be wearing your gear. You need to wear your gear for firefighting. Do you need to wear it on a medical call? No, you don't. So if you can reduce your exposures to the PFAS, you're doing yourself a favor, just like all the other toxins that might be in your gear as well. So that's my little 2 cents there. And you'll see more of that. There's more of it coming. So preliminary exposure reduction. What really is preliminary exposure reduction? Anyone know a real short word for it? Very good, decon, right? Let's call it what it is. It's easy, decon. So the decon process is really simple. It starts just like in hazmat. We have a hot zone, a warm zone, a cold zone, and we go through this process. As we go through the process, we start shedding things off. It starts out with coming out of the building, having proper air management, staying on air if you can. And where I'm at, we have 2 guys. I have 2 firefighters on duty. Can they it's difficult for them to rotate as quickly as it would a department that has like 30 people on scene, right? Because there's not enough people to go around. We still have a job to do. So maybe our air management isn't as good. I would hope that we get enough mutual aid and that we can do that, and they can stay on air when they come out and then go through decon. But they may have to come out, swap a bottle, and go right back, right? They may have to do that. So these are incremental changes that we can do. Am I saying every time you come out of the building you have to go through the decon process? No, it's not what we're saying. We're saying that this is the best practice. Your department may dictate what you end up doing because that's what you have for resources. So there is an inherent risk to firefighting that we all face, and exposure is part of that. But if we have those good practices in place and we can do everything exactly the way it should be, we come out, we remain on air, and we go through a decon line. We know that wet decon is probably the best. It reduces the surface contaminants on our gear by 85%. I've been asked and heard in classes that this is great. When it first came out, it was like, oh, this is awesome. We're reducing our risk for cancer by 85% with using wet decon. That's not what it's saying. Although in the next video, you'll hear somebody say that. It's not what we're saying. We're saying that it reduces the surface contaminants on your gear by 85%. Therefore, it does reduce your risk, but not by 85%, just the contaminants. So I want to be clear about that. There's a little confusion there for a while. So, and then after you go through wet decon, there's a missing slide here, I apologize. You need to decon your skin, right? We know we have a skin exposure, so that's the next step, is to use wet wipes. Does everybody have a system? Like, you could use soap and water, you can use, disposable wipes, you can use just a wet towel, something, just to get the soot or the contaminants off your exposed skin. Really important, easy skill to do. And then after we go through, we need to bag our stuff so we're not contaminating everything down the road. See a clear bag here? Do you know why there's a clear trash bag? Yeah, black trash bags go in the trash. Clear ones with gear in them, they know what's in them. And if I'm a fire chief, if you throw out $6,000 worth of gear, we're gonna have a problem. Yeah, so in the city I worked in, our policy was we had a utility truck, and all the gear went in the back of the utility truck. We went back in our civilian clothes. That's how we did it. Some places are transitioning to have a decon truck that shows up and they have clean gear on it, and they take the dirty gear with them right there on scene. There's a number of ways to do it, but the deal is to make sure you're not putting your dirty gear back in your cab of your truck or in your car or anything without protecting it so you don't cross-contaminate and get that secondary exposure. So this is the process. This video was done here in Miami. It's really good, and we'll watch it, and this is the whole process. So.
Every firefighter knows a fellow firefighter that is either dealing with cancer or who has lost their battle to cancer. We see these most aggressive cancers in the fire service happening at a much younger age than the general population.
The fires that burn today are much more volatile and hazardous than they were 20 years ago. Science has proven that materials that burn today contain carcinogens that are directly linked to firefighter cancer.
Essentially, today's fires put us at greater risk than 20 years ago. We cannot stand idle while our brothers and sisters are dying.
Since 2015, the Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center has been studying this risk. We know that exposure to that is harmful to your health.
And what they have discovered is that when we leave the fire scene, we bring the threat home with us.
It's in your clothes, it's in the cab, it's in the firehouse, and for many of you, you bring it home to your family.
Because of discoveries by the Firefighter Cancer Initiative, we are changing our approaches to decon processes. These are all steps that we must take to leave soot and dangerous compounds out the fire scene, lowering our exposure to known cancer hazards.
To you, this may seem like simple cleaning practices, but when done regularly and consistently, our research has shown that your risk and exposures have decreased significantly.
This firefighter did not engage in the decontamination practices and will be emitting carcinogens for the next 4 to 8 hours. Everyone that they come into contact with, including themselves and the public, is at risk. This firefighter completed the on-scene decontamination procedures and has reduced their risk by 85%.
The transition our fire service is going through today is similar to what we saw in the late 1980s with communicable disease. It was not uncommon for a firefighter paramedic to regularly be exposed to blood or bodily fluids and operate in blood-stained clothing. You would never see those things done today. Today we are challenging the fire service culture again. The importance of this can't be underemphasized. It just may save your life.
You should complete on-scene decon in the following steps. The incident commander will ensure that the decon area is established. The driver engineer will set up decon line with low pressure from a clean water source and mark the area with a cone. The driver engineer will connect the reducer to the discharge and hose to the reducer. Flake the hose out and attach the nozzle. Supply the line with idle pressure from a clean water source. After you leave the building, stay on air. When possible, decon should happen while you're still protected and before you go to rehab. On your way to decon cone, the straps of the SCBA should be loosened to aid the decon process. The crews will now decon each other. The firefighter with the least amount of air will be decon first. Make sure the PPE is tightened up and no areas of the gear when water can get inside the inner lining. Avoid getting water in the top of the jacket near the neck. Only spray the collar line down. The helmet will be cleaned independently later along with the other firefighter equipment. While being rinsed with water, you should stand straight upright with your arms out to the side. This will give a quick 360 rinse from the collar line down. Next, again, work with the collar line down. Use a soft bristle brush with soap mixture to scrub the gear. Be sure to get under the pack and straps and include all possible collection points such as armpit and groin area. Rinse soap mixture off the gear from collar line down. Next, clean the boots. Then switch positions. The firefighter that was decon will now do the same to the other firefighter, again, while both staying on air. Once you both complete the outer scrub and rinse, you can come off air and start to remove your PPE. Fire gloves should be removed first while carefully avoiding skin contact with the exterior of the gloves. Bunker gear should be removed and placed in a drop zone. This area should be downwind of the rehab area. Using the department-provided wipes, clean your hands very well. Use a new set of wipes for your neck, front, and back, and the area behind your ears. Use different wipes when cleaning your entire face. Don't forget your head and hair. Lastly, use a fresh wipe for your eyes. When you release from the scene, you will bag your gear with department-issued bags to decrease your exposure to off-gassing. Although it has undergone gross decon, it is recommended that you still wear EMS gloves. You will bag the following pieces of equipment: gloves, coats, boots, and pants, and helmet. In this order, you will bag your gear. After folding the coat, it will be placed on top of the gloves, followed by the boots and pants. Lastly, clean the helmet by scrubbing the outer shell and wiping the inner soft lining. Do not saturate the inner lining. After cleaning, place the helmet in the bag with the top pointed towards the boot and coat. The bag will be twisted and taped closed. The remaining loose end will be folded over and taped again to complete the sealing. If a second set is not available at the scene, the firefighter hood and gloves should be exchanged for clean ones at the scene. All tools and equipment that were used at the incident will be cleaned on the scene with a soft bristle brush and soap water mixture. The bags of gear will be placed in the apparatus. Bagged PPE can be easily deployed if the need arises. Firefighters should shower within the hour when returning to the fire station.
I know for many of us, this is more than a job.
This is your family. This is your community.
The changes you make today will impact you, your family, and your colleagues.
Not just for today, but for years to come.
Together, we can change the culture and we reduce our risk for cancer.
Pretty good video, pretty good overview of the process, right? And I hope that's what everybody's, we're gonna skip this one. I hope that's what everyone's doing. So at the end of that process, you get back to the firehouse, right? And the the shower within the hour comes into play. Now, we say shower within the hour. I know from being on the job that that's not always practical, right? So it's shower as soon as you can. And let's talk about water temperature. So over the years, I've heard hot water as hot as you can stand, to cold water, then hot, and all this stuff. So, right? So who likes cold showers? There's always one, come on. Who likes super hot scalding showers? There's usually one of those too. Oh, there's two. Okay, so there, we made up for the cold shower. I just like to take a regular shower. Like, just take a shower. That's the key, is just take a shower. Take a good shower, clean all the nooks and crannies. That's the idea, right? Get the stuff off your skin. A good long shower and get it off your skin. So, and you should do this prior, so if you didn't clean your tools, like the video says, clean your tools on scene, which I think is awesome. That doesn't always happen. So when you get back to the firehouse, there's stuff that you've got to do. Cleaning your tools. Well, Frank Lee was in Arizona with us, and he said this thing that kind of grabbed my attention. He's like, so is your Halligan ever going to get cancer? Or your hook going to get cancer? And I'm like, that's a pretty good point. Like, so take care of yourself first, and then your tools after. I thought that was a really good way to look at it. Like, your Halligan's not going to get cancer, dude, so do something. And that's a great way to do it. So take care of yourself, then take care of your apparatus. And then you got to clean your gear after. And there's a whole host of ways to do this. There's only really, the real way is in an extractor. Each department has different models. We have departments that have huge extractors that collect the gear and bring it back, and they have a central cleaning location. We have departments that have multiple stations, that each station has an extractor. We have departments that hire somebody to come out and do it. There's a number of ways to do it, but the deal is NFPA says you have to do it after every time it's exposed. That gets a little bit of a challenge for firefighters to decide when it's exposed. I've always used the rule of thumb: if you put your SCBA on your face to protect yourself from something toxic, your gear is probably contaminated, so it needs to be washed. Is that practical in every department? We had some guys from Buffalo in the room a while back, and unfortunately for them, like, they may go to 2 or 3 fires a night. They've got 2 sets of gear, so at some point there's a give and take, and we know we have a job to do. So there is some risk in the fire service that we have to take, and we will have some exposures. But if we chip away at all these other things, there's other things you can chip away at. Take care of those too. You reduce your risk. All right, so all this prevention stuff is talking about what we can do to limit our risk of getting cancer. The fact is, the fire service, we have a lot of cancer. So the next thing we have to think about is to chip away at that risk of dying from cancer. And we die at a higher rate of cancer in the fire service. So early detection is where we can do that. We've partnered with Detect Together, a company out of Massachusetts that they realized or saw that before their 1540 connection was their previous name, they noticed that people between the ages of 15 and 40 were dying at cancer that probably, if detected early, they would have survived, because in that age group, people just weren't thinking about getting cancer because they weren't thinking the signs of cancer are subtle, you know. So they developed a program. That program is called 3 Steps Detect. It's a great program. I'd highly recommend you to take it. You can take it online or they'll come do it. And I'm going to give you a little overview of it. So we start by monthly exams. Really important. Self-exams are really important. Finding something early is the key to surviving cancer. So self-exams, simple to do. I'm not going to show you or demonstrate or ask anyone to. You can look up a video, all you want. But it's really easy. Annual medical exams becomes really important. A lot of departments mandate it, some don't. It's up to you to make sure that you do it too. And you got to go to your doctor and you have to advocate for your own health. We'll talk about that a little more in a minute. And then there's tools that you can take. There's a letter on our website, and it's shared by a lot of people, that Dr. Hamrock developed back in 2010. This is focused on both cardiac and cancer risk in firefighters. And it's basically telling your doctor, I have experience as a physician. Doc Hamrock was a Boston firefighter. He became a medical doctor. So he knows the deal. And he's telling your doctor, these are the things that you can do to help make a benefit to your patient and save his life by detecting things early. So there's different steps, like PSAs at age 40 for guys, chest CTs at age 50 looking for lung cancer. There's a lot of different things. And some of that stuff is not normally done, but for firefighters it should be done. Or it's done at a much older age, but for firefighters we can do it younger. So it's really important. Then there's all kinds of screening tests. So there's a few really accurate screening tests, and then there's a lot of others out there. But the deal with screening tests is there's only a few specific cancers they look for. They don't look for all of the cancers out there. So even though you get a screening test and say you take a blood test and they're like, yeah, you're cancer-free, you're only cancer-free for what they're looking for. You're not cancer-free for everything. So it's a tool that's valuable, but we have to look at it just as a part of something. So that brings us to early detection. So it's about tracking your health and paying attention and going to see a doctor. And we'll talk 3 steps detect in a second. So this is why we need to do it. We see this is the 5-year survival rate from 2009 to 2015. And these are all cancers that firefighters have. And let's talk about melanoma, skin cancers. So I have this little garden on my head, right? And they find these things and they burn them off. And that's getting them before they become melanoma. And if they find one, I have a 99% survival rate for melanoma by just taking care of it in stage 1. It hasn't gone anywhere. But say that crosses over and gets in my blood, travels in my system, now it's in other places, my risk, my rate of death is increased to, my survival rate's only 25%. So I have a really high risk of dying from that. So what we need to really do is get guys to focus on early detection to save themselves. Heather says it really good, Heather Makel. It's like, we go to a fire and you have a kitchen fire and there's just a pot on the stove burning. Pretty simple to take care of, right? But if that pot gets out of control, goes up the cabinets and rolls over in the room, we got a whole other thing to think about. So we're finding things early. So subtle and persistent health changes are really the best sign of cancer. That's the most common sign of cancer. I talk to folks that call the FCSN and, I'll ask, how'd you notice? And they're like, oh yeah, my run times were getting longer. That's a good one for leukemia. Like I was running 6-minute miles and then I was 7, and then I was 8, and then I was 9, and just didn't seem right. I just couldn't keep up. My buddy Jeff Bokum, who died from cancer, unfortunately, in Portsmouth, he he was having a hard time keeping up with SCBA drills at the firehouse. And the guy was an athlete, an avid skier, very athletic, like just was on a place. And he ignored it, and he kept ignoring it. And he's like, geez, I'm just tired all the time. And I wasn't paying much attention, and neither were a lot of the other guys. And unfortunately, when they found it, it was much too advanced. But those were subtle changes that he noticed for a long time. So the 2 weeks or more, you got to be able to remind yourself. So that's where this 3 steps of tech come in. So step 1 is remember what your great feels like. And that means you know what you feel like when you're best. You know yourself. So you know that you have a change in your bowel movements and you see blood in your stool. That's a change, right? You know that. What is it? I don't know. I mean, pay attention. Don't ignore it for a long period of time. You're tired, like Jeff. You have a change in your sleep habits. There's lots of subtle things that happen that you might notice. But if you don't make a note of it and go to step 2 and use the 2-week rule, you may let it go too long. So has anyone got a flip phone? I always ask this because I'm always curious if there's still one in the room. But we all have a way to remind ourselves, right? We have cell phones. You just say, hey, Siri, set a reminder for 2 weeks to check back on this or that. Sometimes she chirps up. It's good. Pretty easy. So you set that reminder in 2 weeks. Check back with yourself. If the problem's still there, go to step 3. Step 3 is share with your doctor. So that means that you have to give them the information. The thing with going with your doctor is you have to be your own health advocate. If you're not your own health advocate, your doctor can't do the work he needs to do. So they're busy. They have a huge patient loads. There's less and less physicians. There's less nurses. We know we're in a crisis with the medical field. When you go in, and if you're going to talk about something, go in prepared. Tell them the whole story. You got to think of them as a detective. If you don't give them all the information, they're not going to be able to give you the right answer. And then once you share all that stuff, and don't be embarrassed either. Like if it's dirty, nasty things that you got to talk about, they've heard it all before. Don't worry about that. And then when you come up with a plan, like they give you the next step, make sure you know how to follow up on that. So I'm going to send you for this test. Okay, great. What happens after that? Don't let them off the hook without knowing what the next step is. You don't want to be stuck in that, that void of, well, I had the test and the results came and it got to the desk and so didn't see it. You have to advocate for your own health. And that's the easiest method of early cancer detection is following those steps. There's a lot more to it. And the program is much larger than that, but you get the gist. So the FCSN, what do we do? I don't want to keep you here too long. So we've been in business for 16 years, basically. Mike Dubron founded the organization after he had colorectal cancer and discovered that the guys on the job were one of the best resources that he had. Great guy, and we've learned a lot from him. We partner with the IAFF for Cancer Awareness Month. We've been doing that for the last couple of years, and we're going to continue on. And it's not just a month. The resources are on our website year-round, and there's plenty of resources there, and we want you to use them. The big thing we do is we support firefighters with cancer. So what I want you to take home about the FCSN, the most important thing is if somebody in your department or a family member in your department come down with cancer, we're a phone call or an email away from getting them a toolkit and somebody to talk to. The toolkit is a simple box with some resources in it. It has our survivor's guide in it, which is a comprehensive guide to surviving cancer. It talks about all the difficult things that people are going to want to know about. And then we hook them up with a mentor or a peer-to-peer support person who's a firefighter that's been through the cancer that they have. Generally, we try to pair them with the same cancer. Sometimes that's not possible. But they've been there, they've done it, they've lived through it. So it's a good person to talk to. I've sent probably 30 people through the program in the last 10 years, just in my little state, and every single one of them has said what a benefit is. So I want you to make sure you use it. It's free, it's easy, it's just a phone call or an email. Somebody will get back to you and we'll get you in the system, and there's no pressure to use it if you don't want to, but it's good. And then we do this stuff like conferences and help out with research and things like that. We're going to skip that. That's me. This is a QR code that we like to use because we like collecting data just like all scientists, so we can report back when we've done stuff. If you snap a picture of that or go to that site, there's a couple questions. If you leave me your email, I will send you some links about stuff we've talked about and a little more information about the program in a week or two, once my schedule slows down, and I'll get you that information. So I thank you for being here. I know I'm the last presenter and it's 5 o'clock and you guys want to get out of here, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and they have surveys they want you to fill out. So thank you.